Meeting be done at 6:30. So, okay, Pledge of Allegiance, number 1. Do it.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Yes.
Kenny Lawson,
Here.
Scott Meyer, Scott President, Hart Meyer,
Here.
and Cheyenne Hoppett's present. Tony is not. Today.
All right, we have a quorum. We will, do we need a motion to table minutes to next? We don't have the minutes.
I'll make a motion that we table the reading of the minutes to the next meeting. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Cool. All right, new business requests. By Debo. Debo.
You want to say?
Okay, I mean, I'll say it the appropriate way. Okay. For tax abatement for lot 2 and 3 of Debo Cook Park on West Street.
All right, so, yeah.
Summary?
Sure, we can take a item, I'll just do it up here. The new industrial park that is on the west side of town, it's on the south side of 1000 North 96th Street. There are 3 lots in this subdivision, and the southernmost lot is where the Deaton's outdoor, or Deaton's docks is located. They were relocated from the site on Madison Street. And so the developer, property owner, has 2 available lots in this industrial commercial subdivision. And they are looking to do a couple of speculative buildings and are looking for a tax abatement for each of those buildings, which is spelled out in the request letter. So as is the case with our way we process these requests in Fortville, you as a board are simply being asked to make a recommendation on it. It would go to the town council either for a yes vote, no vote, or for no action at their meeting on September 19th at 7 p.m. What I did want to mention is how I will defer to the applicant to give you some more information. But one of the things that we had requested from staff, if the council were to approve this abatement, is to ensure that the types of uses that are allowed in these speculative buildings are consistent with employment generating uses that the council would like to see. So for instance, there could be a wide range of uses that are allowed in that zoning district. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but it is zoned light industrial. And so the applicant has worked with staff to basically say that they're willing to agree to some broad light industrial uses for purposes of tax abatement. Things like distribution, service industries such as HVAC, construction, mechanical, electrical services provided to residential included, manufactured of any kind, and assembly of any kind. And so, for instance, one of the items that was contemplated in this development at one point was there was a gymnastics studio that wanted to locate there. I don't recall if they needed a special exception or if it was allowed by right. But my concern from a staff perspective was simply, if a tax abatement were to be granted, is that an appropriate use for an abatement? So that's the reason, my suggestion would be to put some stipulation in terms of what types of use. Beyond that, I'll defer it to the applicant to maybe answer any questions you have to fill in some specifics on the actual request itself. The other thing, lastly, that you may want to ask them, I know Buzz Crone is running these numbers for council, but in order to make your decision, it may be useful to know what the amount of that abatement actually is. We know what the amount of the $3 million and $2 million property abatement, but in terms of real monies coming into the RDC, it would be advantageous to know what the actual amount is that you could forego. So with that, I'll defer it to the applicant.
You may use the microphone. Sure. Good evening, I'm Chad Sweeney with Ginovus. We're a consulting firm. We represent Debo Cook, Paul Deaton, and Mike Cook, who of course couldn't be here this evening, but in regard. So with maybe a little bit more detail about the development. So the two buildings are planned. The first one would be 26,600 square feet. And the second one, which would follow kind of in the market conditions, maybe a year, 2 years later, would be 32,000 square feet. As Adam noted, the request is for a tax abatement, which just, as a reminder, is really an incentive or inducement for a tenant in the building. The tenant will be responsible for paying the property taxes. So this is something that helps make these buildings marketable, make it competitive with other industrial properties in the market. And it really is important to attract a high quality tenant. As Adam said, and I think rightfully so on behalf of the town, there was an interest in making sure that there were high quality tenants in the buildings, and our client did agree to work hard to attract those kind of high wage, high skilled jobs, and agree within the parameters that Adam mentioned that if there's a tenant that comes to the building that doesn't qualify in one of those categories or requires a variance from the current zoning, the town would have the ability to contractually terminate the tax abatement. So that tenant would have to come in and pay full taxes if it something that didn't fit in one of those categories the town wanted to see. As far as the tax revenue, it's a little difficult right now. There's property parking costs and assessed values are going up incredibly fast. But we did some estimates based on the buildings assessing at around $65 a square foot, and we came up with total savings over the abatement term for both buildings combined of about $600,000, with the buildings paying or generating about the same amount of new taxation for the town during that period of time. So it's basically a 50% tax abatement. But again, those savings would be realized by the tenant in the building. They'd be responsible for the taxes. So we're very familiar with Buzz and his firm, and we'd be happy to share our calculations and confirm those for you with the council. So Paul Deaton's here with me, so we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
On your light industry that you're going to possibly put in there, is what do you think to protect the environment?
Protect the environment?
I mean, there is environmental issues with.
Yeah, well, when we first did the industrial park, we did the standards of Hancock County and Fortville, so we have our own retention. So none of that goes into the water system. As far as depends on what the tenant's going to be, and some of that's going to be mandated either by the county or the state or municipal as to what they can and can't do. So no, we're not going to put in the truck stop or any place like that. I just don't see, we don't have the space. But as far as environmental, I don't think there's any.
And then Adam, you mentioned something about to qualify for a tax abatement, it had to be an employee-based commercial building.
Yeah,
And that's why a gym wouldn't.
That'd be my recommendation. It does say, in reading the fine print, which has written up, we're still saying any use that is permitted under the current zoning. which is understandable. However, and I can go back and look in the zoning ordinance to see exactly what types of uses are allowed from industry, because we know these uses that they're mentioning here, distribution, service industries, manufacturing, assembly, those are allowed in light industrial. But I don't know if some of the personal services, things like that, are also allowed in that zoning district. So, again, that would just be my recommendation to try to tie it to at least as much employment as possible for the site, and so this higher quality jobs as well.
If I'm understanding right, if for some reason the building we had leased to someone that didn't qualify for this, the contract would be revoked.
Right, the council could revoke the abatement or that step of putting conditions on.
So is the abatement gonna be governed by the state abatement code, or is it?
So,
town?
yeah, so the abatement schedule that they put together of this drawdown, phase, basically phased out abatement is typical here in Fortville and I think the municipalities across the state. What happens is the council every single year has to evaluate what's called their SB1 forms. You would call that. I don't remember if they come before this, but they don't come before RDC. It basically is a yearly audit that the property owner is explaining to the council and the residents that yes, we fulfilled our promises that we made in the initial statement of benefits. And so the council has the ability to terminate that or to postpone the continuation of the abatement if they so choose. And I think it's been done once before in Portland.
Town council would be the auditing on, or it's gonna be the SB1 instead. This Fortville Act on the SB1.
In order, yes, the council president, in conjunction with the council themselves, would sign the form saying that, yep, they're in compliance, and then that is ultimately filed with the county auditor and the state level. So there's a system of check and balances.
So is the proposed abatement, is it gonna be per parcel as a collective unit, or is it per building?
Per building is the way.
So each building will have its own abatement.
Yes,
Got it.
given that they're gonna be built kind of a different timeline.
Okay.
So, the plan is, assuming approval, that they start on the first building yet this fall. And then the other one a year later, assuming some market conditions are still good. Yes, we can approve it for that.
Okay, is it multi-tenant, office space, is it all? It'll be multi-tenant, the first building will be 26,000 square feet. When you say first, which one's that? That's lot 2.
Yeah, I think it's one just close to
Yeah,
the road.
north of the 96. Okay. So that'll be multi-tenant, multi-tenant. Okay. And then the south building. We might get lucky, we might find a tenant to the whole building. We don't. Okay. And are you the same scenario on the other building? It's just gonna be a little bigger building. 32,000 square feet. South building. One thing I'd like to point out is on these buildings, we're not doing them on the cheap either. We're gonna exceed the architectural requirements. We're gonna do masonry halfway up on both buildings, instead of just doing masonry on the facades and metal on the rest of it. We're gonna do masonry all the way around, halfway up. I don't think I'll show that in there all through stuff. No. Yeah. We as the RDC care about landscaping, so I don't think that would be a town council.
I think since you're simply making a recommendation, you can recommend whatever you think is appropriate.
I don't know, if I could just clarify one thing on the use. I think it's our intent that it would both satisfy current zoning and fit within one of those categories. So you're kind
Or
of.
any use that is permitted under current zoning and, right, okay, gotcha.
So if there,
That's how I put it.
part of variance, it would allow the town to consider termination or not in the one.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I think I read it correctly. First thing I want to put there. Quickly here.
For the city or self-storage, no, it's.
Could be, the current taxes over the last few years have been very low because it was only, farmland. Prior to the two improvements.
Yeah.
Buildings going up on the south portion. And they do have, just for your background information. They do have site plan approval from the planning commission for that lot 2, the one closest to Thousand North. Lot 3 has not been formally submitted yet, so for lot 2, they've got the plan approved, and the next step is submitting the full-blown construction plans for the building and for the site. I believe we've already approved the
Conception.
yeah, we still have to get the full-blown construction plans in for staff review, but that one has been.
Does this start the abatement schedule, does that start as soon as it's built or as soon as there's a tenant? Or,
Yeah, that's right, once it's assessed, so hopefully, it'll be simultaneous, it's not too hard to get the tenant in while it's being constructed, but then yes, it would be based on when it's constructed, not necessarily when it's been occupied.
So right now it's 3. And then once that $65 estimate for 26,000 square feet kicks in.
right, and I mean, I just know that it's going to be absorbed by the tenant if there's multiple tenants or they only.
That's part of their lease, yes. If there's any,
But then. Right, so if you were to only have one tenant taking up a portion of the building, what happens to then?
Is it triple net?
yes,
Yeah, so they're gonna pay common area fees and they'll pay their proportionate share of those taxes.
Okay. Okay,
Then the owner would pay the remaining.
okay.
So it's always
It's
important to
important
get
to
it, get it, and it's broker.
Right, okay. That makes sense. I was confused by the tenant.
Sure.
Like,
And
But if there's not a tenant.
then the entry one that you got.
Mhm. Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
No.
So then we're looking for a motion for a recommendation.
I'll make a favorable motion for this, abatement to the town council as proposed.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
not very much.
Review of finance.
Nothing has changed since last month. In fact, nothing has changed since July 21st, actually July 9th.
Make a motion that we, accept the, financials as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There are no invoices. Do you have any public comments?
Well, real quick, I just wanted to mention on the financials on the commitments spreadsheet. What I did was for the facade repair program, I broke it out into 3 different line items. So we've got non-allocated funds, and then we've got 124 staff studio 309. And so, the total amount that was pledged for the whole program over the 2-year period was $75,000. And so, the line items just break out the funding in terms of how much you still have available versus how much, you committed.
What comments? No. Staff comments?
Nothing for me, unless you have any questions on anything.
Do we have the facade? Updated, is that like, where would
Yeah.
someone interested in the facade program find all of the information? Is it on the website now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
We will do that. I had asked Alex for, put together a document based on the discussion that we all had at previous meetings. I know he was in and out of town, so, we'll circle back with him and get working on that. But yeah, what I would like to do is, once we have, that formal document put together in terms of a waiver, do the waiver to allow, post on social media and things of that nature. So once that's done, then we'll put together a simple application memo type thing. And
Okay.
put it on the website. We'll do the work on it, so.
Okay, so if someone were interested in buying now, should they just contact you?
Yes, that's how we've been doing. it
Okay,
so
cool.
far. Mhm. Yeah, the last one, actually, the one in July, there were a couple of additional clauses
Okay,
that
I think
you
you
guys,
know.
August then, yes,
Yeah.
the ones that you had added that you put together in the notes there, yes.
But the August won't be on the website.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Board comments? Looking for a motion to adjourn.
I will make a motion to adjourn at 6:50.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
We're going.
Go team.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks. Good night.
Like, let me know.